Hey everybody, this is Perch. Got a mail here I really like. I like the sentiment of it. I like what's being said in it. I'm gonna read it to you in a minute. I want to conflate it. I want to combine it with this little stat, and you'll understand why maybe in a moment. Mark Millar posts on Twitter, and a couple people have done videos about it, but I haven't heard a take that actually kind of hits the nail on the head. People are using it for one reason or another, but they're kind of missing the everything cuts every way point. And that's that from some internal surveys, from some estimations that were done, 5%, and I've says, well, somewhere between 10 and 5%, but closer to 5% of the comic buying audience, meaning the people who are actually paying cash for comics, who are helping to fuel this industry, are on Twitter. Now, I'm sure that metric changes dramatically for crowdfunding. Okay, of course it does, based on how crowdfunding has to be marketed and where that audience is coming from and everything else. Definitely, those numbers are going to look different for that. But for your traditional Marvel, DC, Image, Boom, all the companies, Vault, and manga, by the way, the stuff that Viz is putting over here, and the stuff that's in Japan. And there is an interesting kind of different stat because Shueisha did a similar survey and found that 90% of their readers were active on Line. But Line is a Line, if you want to go look it up, is a dramatically different beast than Twitter and Facebook. It's for lots of different reasons. It's hard to explain. It's a whole other video that I probably should do. But Line is kind of a social media platform there, and that is heavy engagement there. But it is a ridiculously different platform. So be that as may, we'll put that on the side. 5%, close to between 5 and 10, close to 5 of the comic paying with cash audience is on Twitter. What does that mean? That means that all the trending stuff, all the outrages on both sides, really account for a sliver of the people who are actually buying comics. Now, that's not to say these people aren't reading comics. We've talked about piracy. I'm sure that factors in pretty majorly to everything. But in general, it's an insignificant number. You could put it this way: you could lose that audience completely. It could go to zero, and it wouldn't be terrible. You wouldn't want to have 5% of your audience go away, but we've seen 5% drop before in previous years. Around 2017, I believe, we saw more than a 5% drop. You can have it happen. It would be the industry would survive if all of the activity, all the buyers on Twitter vanished. So it's worth thinking about, and this is why I say it cuts both ways. We see creators puffing up their chest and getting very high and mighty on Twitter about their relative power and importance and wrong think and all this kind of stuff that goes on there. It doesn't matter. All that attention is equaling nothing for their comic sales. All that outrage, all that. Think about how stupid some of the publishers have to feel for bowing to pressure. Remember those people who got really angry on Twitter when Raphael Albuquerque's variant cover for Batgirl went out. There was like a homage to The Killing Joke, and they pulled it because Twitter was upset. You got to feel kind of dumb at this point to have pulled that and to bother when it was 5% of your audience. It was nothing. On the other end, though, because again, it cuts both ways. You have to acknowledge the various, the customer movement via Twitter is not, it's not having an impact, and it does answer one ugly question people don't like to really internalize, which is, I've been beating the drum. Not me, but people have been saying, look, my wallet is closed to Marvel for years, and yet they keep pumping this stuff out. When are they going to learn? Well, they're going to learn when it's more than 5%. But if all the people on Twitter get mad, it doesn't matter. One of the interesting things that came out of the DC round robin was that Instagram is far more powerful a tool of customer engagement. People are actually, focusing on the comics. In one day, the votes on Instagram dwarfed the votes on Twitter over a week. That you got to let that sink in a little bit. These platforms make a ton of noise, but they account for very little. And even, it's questionable how many of those Instagram customers are actually buying too. But Twitter is a fraction of Instagram, and and both presumably are a fraction of people who are actually paying money to keep the business afloat. So just something to think about when various sides are throwing rocks at each other, or various like oh, that fan is associated with that group. It's like, yeah, who cares? 5%, who cares? But it feeds nicely into this mail that is a very positive mail, more positive than probably my intro. But you'll understand again why I'm putting these two together. So this mail says, I know the industry is not perfect, but I actually find it easier now than at any time in the 50 plus years I've been reading comics to find ones I like. And I would be surprised if this wasn't true for any comics fan, even if they like different comics I do. I think this writer is 100% right. There are a lot of comics out there. We do have I've done many videos, and I stand by it that there's not nearly enough diversity in genres, meaning different types of comics for different people. There's plenty of mistakes that get made, absolutely. But despite all that, there is a pretty wide breadth of comics, and if you throw manga in as well, that's easier to get your hands on than it was, even 5 years ago. 10 years ago, it's much easier to get a hold of manga. We are living in arguably good times for accessibility, and it's one reason why I push back. And that's why I apologize, by the way, to anyone if I've been a dick to you. Some people say, the industry is full of, there's nothing in the industry that's worth anything, and I'll say nothing. Like, seriously, nothing. Like, let's just. Are you talking about Marvel and DC? I absolutely believe it's true that you can become disenfranchised with Marvel, or you can become disenfranchised with DC based on their direction. That's very true, and it's happened before. It's happened in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. A lot of people have rose-colored glasses to the 90s, but they forget that Marvel disenfranchised many people in the 90s with what they were doing. There were people who walked away. I totally understand if when you say nothing being produced is any good to me. If you're when you say comics, if you actually mean Marvel and DC, okay, I get it. I actually get that. And first off, it's your money, as always, is your choice. But it makes sense if you're talking Marvel and DC. It makes less sense if you're talking about the comic industry, because this writer is correct. There's so much out there you can get your hands on now. But anyway, the writer goes on. I don't know if it's a male or female, but I'm speaking generically. The writer. I see a lot of burned out fans online who don't seem to realize that the change they perceive as happening in comics is largely within themselves. That's some tough medicine, but pretty true. As younger readers, they walked by comics they wouldn't like on their way to ones they did like. Now, the very sight of writers or characters they don't like consumes way too much of their lives. That was kind of the point I was making in a couple of videos now, and this writer, damn it, does a much better job than I do in making that point in just a sentence. It's true. I think, and it's why I say, buy the stuff you like, feel good about how you're spending your money, and ignore the rest. Because the more of your life and your effort and your energy you give to the things you dislike, it just starts taking up space in your brain. And you're going to miss stuff that you would like. You're going to miss good stuff. I had somebody, it's a comical. I'll admit I'm a sarcastic bastard if you haven't gotten that. But on Fridays, I have this bit up where I show, the Dynamite covers, and I show like these pervy covers. One of the reasons I do is not a single week goes by that somebody says, the Puritanian SJWs have removed all sense of the female body out of all North American comics. And it's not true. Frankly, it's not even true of DC and Marvel, because there are books out there that have boobs. If you're looking for boobs, Captain Marvel is not the book to go to. But there are others that are there. Now, are they as gratuitous in Marvel and DC as they were in the 90s? No. I like the Marvel swimsuit special. I admit it. I liked it. There's some good drawings in there. You bet. I like the comedy of the Punisher in that weird little skull, bikini outfit. That was funny. But they're still out there. Are there less? Yes. Are there none? No. Don't speak in absolutes. I think, but it's an indication of being so consumed with the problems that we're starting to miss the things we like. I mean, hell, well, it's a jungle fauna comics. Looks like you're in for pure TNA. If that's what you want, it's there for you. It comes out seemingly monthly. I don't know anymore, but it's there. Uh, Again, you have to focus on what you like first. Get that really rock solid in your heart, and then go after the things you dislike. But make sure you're doing them that order. If you're going for the stuff you hate first, you're going to find you have very little room for the stuff you like, and you're just going to be unhappy all the time. And then I think the media, society, social media, and other things, they kind of trick people into believing that being unhappy is how you are happy. If you're unhappy all the time, that's how you be happy. And that's backwards, wrong, and you'll waste too much of your life doing it. It's just, you can do whatever you want, of course, but that's my advice. I like the way this guy put it. I think it's okay. This person put it. I love your channel. Okay, thanks. Interview. Okay, I won't say the nice parts where he's saying nice things about me. Thank you. But I think this is a very good point. I think that the industry, there is a lot out there. I think it is a shame, and I think we should be maybe a little upset about it, that we have to work so hard to find that stuff. I think, it would be nice if all the energy and the effort that goes into owning, I don't know, whatever the hell Tom King is up to these days, or Bendis, instead that effort went to the 28 other publishers putting out comics every month, that with a little bit of marketing and promotion and visibility, they could rise up. Instead of spending priority number one going after the SJWs who are writing whatever they're writing, instead focus on some of the comics that are actually putting out good stuff. Give them some promotion. Break the industry. Here's the pushback I gave, and somebody just wrote the other day about this. They said, no, walking away is not an option. If you walk away, they win. So my counter to that is, they're winning anyway. If your goal is to go and fight this culture battle on Twitter, remember, 5% of the audience buying comics on Twitter, you're fighting a nowhere battle. It's like, it was in World War II, long after the battle had finished. I don't know if this feels like urban legend, but maybe somebody can correct me with my history. I should know this better. I've been told this story so many times, and somebody told me it was not true. But there was this island where there were some Japanese soldiers on that island, and they didn't get the message the war was over. So they just kept, gearing up to fight. And much later, people come across this group, and it's like, yeah, the battle's over. It was very confusing and strange. That's what some of this feels like. If you're taking the fight to people for the culture war on social media, number one, social media is nothing for actual money in comics. It's a non-factor. And frankly, if you're hearing this and you think, if you don't think that's good news, I don't know what to tell you. That's great news. The dumpster fire that is Twitter, and the BS and the shaming and the blocking and all that kind of bullshit that goes on there means nothing to the comic industry. And frankly, the fact that so many creators are so addicted to what goes on Twitter and the various shenanigans and nonsense that are there is, they are ruining their careers. If you hate it and you hate people act like that, be happy, because they are cheerfully destroying their own careers over there. They're like that group on the island. They're fighting a battle with no one, like nobody that matters. It's an irrelevant battle. The only thing you have to kind of get right with yourself is they're going to pretend that they are like kings of the world. They're going to be very arrogant about what they do. But remember, the emperor has no clothes. There's no audience there. 5%. Who cares? Don't let that mask you finding the comics you want. There are a lot of comics out there. Enjoy. It can be fun. And I do think that if, in the past, you used to cheerfully or blissfully ignore the stuff that you didn't like. And now, largely thanks to social media, we obsess over the stuff we don't like. And that's not healthy. If you find yourself like, again, like that person who wrote that said, I can't just ignore it, then they win. Question, like, are you making any progress? You're waking up every day and charging into battle. Are you actually doing anything useful for yourself or for anyone else? Or are you like that person stuck on the island fighting a battle that's already over? Again, this won't feel like a satisfying victory in the short term, but I guarantee you it will in the long term. If you put that effort into finding comics you like, you put that effort into, supporting or blowing up, and I mean blowing up in a good way, small independent publishers, give them some sustainability that they can keep going, then you are investing in a longer future that is going to feel very satisfying. And that's going to have far more of an impact than taking it to whoever on social media. Whether you're a creator, whether you're a customer, that's just my advice. Thank you for this mail. This is a great mail. I agree. I do think there's stuff out there. You have to find it. And we are living in a crazy time where we've got worldwide access to comics. We haven't had that before, not at this level. And that is pretty awesome. For all the people who are like, hey, manga is killing US comics, just remember, how awesome is it that we live in a time where you even know that you have the ability to get those comics. It used to be hard. Trust me, as somebody who tried to collect Rumiko Takahashi stuff in the 90s and in the late 80s, it was hard. You had a very hard time getting that stuff. It's easy now, which is awesome. Anyway, something to think about. Free to think. That's nice that he's all cheerful and everything, but damn it, I'm going to war tomorrow, so got to do that. That's okay. It's your time. At the end of the day, it's your time. Thanks for listening.